So put that up. And on March 31st, I ran off a list of the 20 largest companies in the world by stock market value. And those names, a good many of which will be familiar to you, but they were led by Apple at slightly over $2 trillion. And it went down to the number 20th was worth 330 odd billion. But those are the 20 largest companies in the world by market value on March 31st. Now, if I had I was hoping I could get a little quiz machine so I could have everybody weigh in on this answer, and we could flash it up a little later, but proved technically impossible. But what I would like you to do is look at that list. Starts off with Apple. Saudi Aramco is a pretty kind of a specialized company. It's I don't know whether it's 95% owned by the government or what, but it's essentially a country that's for sale there in terms of that business, owned by the government or what, but it's essentially a country that's for sale there in terms of that business. Companies for America. So when you hear people say that America hasn't, it's not working very well or something of the sort, in the whole world, of the 6 top companies in value, 5 of them are in the United States. And if you think about it, we talked a little about this last year, but in 1790, we had 0.5% of the world's population. And a little less, we had 4 million people, 3.9 million people. 600,000 of them were slaves. Ireland had more people than the United States had. Russia had 5 times as many people as the U.S. did. Ukraine had twice as many people as the United States. So here we were, but what did we have? We had a map for the future, an aspirational map that somehow now only after the Constitution, 232 years later, leaves us with 5 of the top 6 companies in the world. With 5 of the top 6 companies in the world. It's not going to go short. We had good soil, had decent climate, but so some of those other countries I named, and the system has worked unbelievably well. Just imagine thinking of 5 of the top 6 companies in the world ending up with a country that started with 0.5% of the population just a few hundred years ago. But what I would like you to do is look at that list for a minute or two, if you want to, and then make an estimate, make your own guess. How many of those companies are going to be on the list 30 years from now? Here they are, these powerhouses. And how many would you guess are going to be on the list? Well, it's not going to be all 20. It may not even be all 20 today or tomorrow. This was March 31st. But what would you guess? And think about that yourself. Would you put on 5, 8? Well, whatever it would be, I would now invite you to look at slide 2. Whatever it would be, I would now invite you to look at slide 2, or L, and look at the top 20 from 1989. And if you look at the top 20 from 1989, there's 2 things that should grab your interest, at least 2. None of the 20 from 30 years ago are on the present list. None. 0. There were then 6 U.S. companies on the list, and their names are familiar to you. We have General Electric, we have Exxon, we have IBM Corp. I mean, they're still around. Merck is down there at number. None made it to the list. Play the quiz a little. A few minutes ago would have put down 0, and I don't think it will be 0. But it is a reminder of what extraordinary things can happen, things that seem obvious to you. Japan had this wonderful bull market for a very long time, so you had a number of Japanese companies on the list. Today there are none. And the United States had the 6, now we have 13, but they aren't the same 6. I would invite you to think about one other thing as you look at this list. 1989 was not the Dark Ages. I mean, we weren't just discovering capitalism or anything else. And people thought they knew a lot about the stock market and the efficient market theory was in, and it was not a backward time. And if you look, the top company at that time had a market value of 100 billion, 104 billion. So the largest company in the world, title, in just a shade over 30 years, has gone from 100 billion to 2 trillion. At the bottom, the number 20 has gone from 34 billion to something a little over 10 times that. Well, it tells you something about what's happened with equality, which is a hot subject in the inflation period as a whole. But it tells you that capitalism has worked incredibly well, especially for the capitalists. And it's a pretty astounding number. Do you think it could be repeated now that 30 years from now that you could take 2 trillion for Apple and multiply any company and come up with 30 times that for the leader? You know, it seems impossible, and maybe it is impossible. But we were just as sure of ourselves as investors and Wall Street was in 1989 as we are today. But the world can change in very, very dramatic ways.